This is the Movcan V40 electric bike. I just wanted to share my experience with this in case anyone else is considering it, because this style of e-bike sits in a weird middle ground. It looks and rides more like a small electric moped than a typical commuter bicycle, but it still has pedals and gears, and you can use it for commuting, errands, or just riding dirt paths and rough streets without feeling like you're going to rattle your teeth out. The kind of person I think this fits is someone who wants speed and stability more than they want something light or easy to carry. If you live in a walk-up apartment or you need to lift your bike onto a rack every day, this is probably going to test your patience. If you have a garage, a ground-level entry, or you can roll it straight out onto the street, it makes a lot more sense. The reason I even bothered trying the V40 is the combination of motor power, a big battery, and the fat tire setup. On paper, it's a 1500-watt peak rear hub motor, and in real life, it feels like it has enough shove to get you out of trouble in traffic or to keep momentum up a hill without you doing that slow, awkward grind. I'm not saying it replaces a motorcycle, it doesn't, but it also doesn't feel like one of those underpowered e-bikes where you're pedaling hard and pretending the motor is helping. The look is very mini-bike in person. Mine is the brown version, and it has that long bench seat and compact 20-inch wheel stance. The frame is aluminum, and when I grab the bike and shake it, it feels solid, not creaky. The welds and paint on my unit were fine. Not flawless, not messy, just normal. A detail I noticed right away is it's a lot of bike visually. People clock it as something faster than a regular e-bike. Touch points matter on a bike like this, and that's where I started forming opinions quickly. The seat is wide and comfortable for short to medium rides, but the riding position leans a little aggressive because of where the bars sit relative to the seat. After longer stretches, I caught myself wanting the bars slightly higher. If you already ride BMX-style bikes or mini-motos, it'll feel familiar. If you're used to upright city bikes, expect a little wrist pressure until you adjust. Tires are a huge part of the experience. These are fat tires and they do what fat tires do. They smooth out broken pavement, they track well on gravel, and they don't get knocked around as easily by pothole edges. I rode it over patched city streets, a sandy shoulder by the road, and a gravel trail with some washboard sections. The bike stayed composed, and I wasn't fighting the bars. The trade-off is rolling resistance. You feel it if you try to pedal without much assist, and you definitely feel it if the battery is low and you're trying to get home under your own power. Setup was mostly straightforward, but it's not the kind of bike I'd assemble while distracted. Mine came mostly put together, and I still had to spend time dialing things in. The most important practical step for me was checking the brake alignment and making sure nothing was rubbing. Hydraulic brakes can feel great, but if the rotor is slightly out of true or the caliper is off by a hair, you'll hear it. I also checked every bolt I could get to easily, because shipping can loosen things and this bike has enough torque to punish anything that isn't tightened properly. One thing I'll mention, because it's the sort of real-life annoyance that doesn't show up in product pages: a weight. You don't notice it once you're moving, but you notice it every time you have to reposition it in a tight space, roll it up a steep curb, or lift the front end to turn it around. If you're storing it indoors, measure your hallway and think about where it's going to live. I learned quickly that I needed a parking routine so I wasn't awkwardly wrestling it into place. In daily use, the removable battery is a big deal, mostly because it changes how you actually charge the bike. I can pull it and charge it inside instead of dragging the whole bike near an outlet. The battery on this model is 48 volts and 25 amp hours, and in plain terms, it's large enough that I don't think about charging after every ride. My real range depends heavily on how I ride. If I'm using throttle a lot and pushing higher speeds, the miles disappear faster than you'd expect. If I'm using pedal assist and letting the bike cruise at more reasonable speeds, range feels much more realistic. The up to 120 miles type claims are always the best case scenario, and that wasn't how my rides looked. Speed-wise, yes, it can get moving. In the real world, what matters more than top speed is how it accelerates from a stop and how it holds speed on small hills. I tested it on a few commutes where I had stop signs every couple blocks, and it consistently got back up to pace quickly. The throttle response on my bike was predictable, not jerky, which I appreciate because jerky throttle on a heavy bike is how people get surprised and wobble into traffic. Hill climbs were where it impressed me most. On moderate hills, I didn't need to stand up and mash the pedals. On steeper ones, it still pulled, though I could hear the motor working harder, and I could see the battery drop faster. Braking is a big safety thing on a bike that can run fast. And the dual hydraulic discs are the reason I was willing to ride this at speed. The feel at the lever is controlled and strong. I tested a few hard stops on dry pavement and also rode after a light rain. In wet conditions, stopping distances still increase. Physics is physics. But I felt like I had actual control instead of that vague squeezing feeling you get on cheaper mechanical brakes. I did have a short break-in period where the brakes were a little noisy until the pads bedded in. Suspension is another area where expectations matter. It's a dual suspension setup, and it helps with comfort, especially on rough streets and packed dirt. It takes the edge off. It's not downhill mountain bike suspension. When I hit deeper potholes at speed, I could still feel it bottoming a bit, and that's my reminder to slow down, because this is still a bicycle-style chassis with a lot of weight and speed behind it. The 7-speed gearing is useful, but I treated it more like support than the main event. I shifted down for starts and for steeper grades, so the motor and drivetrain weren't getting slammed. That's something I'd recommend. If you ride this like a scooter and ignore the gears, you're asking more from the chain and cassette over time. After a handful of rides, I also rechecked chain tension and gave it a quick clean and lube. With the torque this bike can put down, basic drivetrain maintenance matters. The display is where I glance for speed and battery, and it did what I needed. It's readable, it gives you the basics, and it didn't glitch on me. The headlight and taillight make it more usable at night, and I'm a big believer that if you're riding something that can move this fast, you should run lights even in daytime traffic. On a ride home at dusk, I was glad I had them. There's also app support, and the more techie features like keyless NFC-style access, depending on the exact configuration. I'm going to be honest, I like the convenience, but I don't rely on it. I set it up, confirmed it worked, and then I mostly rode the bike. Where the app is actually useful is checking basic status and getting a quick snapshot of what's going on without guessing. If you're the type who wants everything to function without any setup steps, you might find the app pairing process a little fiddly at first. A few limitations showed up pretty clearly the longer I lived with it. The biggest is still weight and portability. The second is that pedaling without assist is not fun. You can do it, but it's a heavy bike on fat tires, and it feels like pushing a loaded cart once the battery is low. Another issue is that bikes in this category sometimes arrive needing more adjustment than people expect. Mine was fine overall, but I wouldn't call it pull it out of the box and ride perfectly without checking brakes, tire seating, and fasteners. So where do I land on it after real rides? I think the Movcan V40 makes sense if you want a fast, stable e-bike for commuting, back roads, and mixed terrain, and you're okay with the practical realities of a heavy machine. It feels confident on rough surfaces, it has braking that matches its speed, and the battery capacity means I'm not constantly planning my day around charging. At the same time, it asks more from you in terms of storage space, moving it around, and doing basic checks so it stays tight and safe. If you've ridden lighter, more traditional e-bikes, this is going to feel like a different category. If you want something that rides like a regular bicycle first and an e-bike second, this probably isn't it. But if you want something that feels planted, pulls hard from stops, and can handle bad pavement and dirt paths without drama, I get why people are drawn to this style. If you've got questions about anything I didn't cover, or you want me to test a specific scenario with it, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you want more real-world reviews like this. Thank you for watching.